This is a podcast from Rover.
Welcome to Parents We've Met, where we chat about the magic and mess of parenting. Today's guest is an old friend of mine. Her name is Kylie DellaBarca Steel. Now, I knew we needed to get her on the couch after reading her beautiful blog, Courage, Love and Legacy, where she contemplates on the edge of eternity. Now, this was a heart-wrenching, hope-filled, rich conversation that will leave you holding close all that is important. Kylie, thank you so much for being here today. It's wonderful to have you on the couch with us, and there's much to talk about. But with anyone that sits with us, we love to start with a bit of an introduction of who's in the family. So could you tell us a little bit about the makeup of your whānau?
Absolutely. In my immediate family, I've got a husband and 3 boys, and they're ranging from 13 to 6 years old. And then in my side of the family, I've got my mum and dad. Dad's Italian, so we've got a bit of Italian dynamic going on my side of the family. And there's me, I'm the eldest, and 3 brothers. So there's a common theme you'll pick up in a second. And then on my husband's side, he is also one of 3 boys. So lots of boys, not so many females in the family.
Wow. Boy squad, I like it.
Boy squad.
I love when talking about parenting, it's quite cool to start back with your own upbringing, growing up in the 80s, 90s. What was your home life like?
Yeah, so I was raised in Auckland, out east in Howick, Bucklands Beach kind of ways, and had really great parents. Dad worked really hard. He was kind of gone every morning at 3 o'clock out to the markets, and so I have really cool memories of sometimes getting up in the morning with him to go out to the fruit and veggie markets and just being in this cold, crisp world with just great multicultural world, lots of different ethnicities there. So a really fun time with Dad. And Mum was a really present mum. I always remember something she said was that she always wanted to be committed to being at home when we got home from school. So she was always there and always present with us for the afternoons and evenings, which was really special. And I think probably my fondest pre-teen memory would be the freedom of living in a little cul-de-sac, and we had a great bunch of friends. We had this club called the Par Road Pioneers, and we had a little tree house, and we would drink Peter Rabbit tea, which was, you know, the old chamomile tea, and we would go to the beach, which was just down the road every day, and play cricket, and we just roamed. We just had such a fun, adventurous childhood where there was a stream and we would build huts and just make missions out of the environment around us. And yeah, that would be my childhood.
Beautiful.
We take lots of learnings from the family that we grew up in. So for you and Anton, what were some of the things that you've gleaned or that you've remembered and that you've actually put through into your own family?
Yeah, and it's interesting with learnings, there's always there's the positives and the negatives to that, and there's the things that we want to embrace and use as a foundation, and there's the stuff that we go, oh, do we want to go further than our parents?
See you later.
Yeah. So there's a bit of both. I think the positives for us both, and I talked about that outdoor freedom, I think both our sets of families, Anton did a lot of camping as a young boy, and for us, Dad took us and Mum to so many different activities. I did sailing and swimming and drama and, you know, whatever we wanted to do, they were kind of behind us and would take us to do that. So there was a real commitment to that. Also, we both come from a family of servers, I think. Anton's parents, there was pastor, teacher, counsellor in his parents' roles. And my mum and dad, they just had an open home. It was, and even my grandparents, anyone was welcome from any background, and there was always a real genuine care and love and support of people. So we both come with a real supporting heart, and that's something that we've taken and embraced and want to hold. The things that we would probably want to grow into was, I said, Italian family. So there was a loudness to our conflicts and our arguments, which I swore I would never do as a mum. And when I first became a mum, I found that came through a little bit. And so I've really had to work to not be a yelling mum, but a mum that's willing to sit down and listen to the kids and hear their side of the story and work through conflicts together. So that was something that, you know, and even my dad would totally acknowledge that that's something he's grown in since becoming a granddad. And as we've moved out of home, he was like, actually, this is an area we can all grow in. So that's been really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So what kind of mum did you hope to be when you were first starting out?
It's funny, I don't know that I'm a big thinker of these things. I kind of am a diver in it. So I think I dove into motherhood. There is one thing, though, that I was really certain of. As a child, my kind of baby story was that I was a IUD mistake baby, or I would call myself a miracle baby. So I kind of had a little bit of hurt around not necessarily being wanted or chosen. And so I was really intentional with my kids of being, I really wanted you, I've chosen you, you're purposed and chosen. And that it went as far as we had home births for our first two kids, because I really wanted them to be born into our home and into our huts and have that beautiful nesting place where we could just hang out together and live through those beautiful, precious early days. And then from there, not maybe like any parent, but I kind of didn't know what to do with a baby. So I got the books out. My first son didn't sleep a lot, and so we tried the cry it out technique, and it didn't feel right in my heart. And it wasn't until one day I was doing a lot of community development work in the Pacific, and one of my RSE friends, the RSE is the work visa that they come under, a Ni Vanuatu friend, Iata, looked at the cot that we were putting our son in, and he was crying, and he said, "Why are you putting him in a little cage?" And I went, "Oh, tell me about how you do it." And then I travelled to Vanuatu a few times with Malachi, even at 3 months old, and watched how they raised their children, and just the connection and the intimacy and the always there with them, and the kind of freedom they had as parents to not read books and just do it how it felt natural. So I really started embracing that, I think, as a mum. And yeah, so my second son slept with us his entire time till he was 4.5, and I was pregnant with Ezra, and there was no more room in the bed because my tummy was so big. And then Ezra at 7 is still coming in, or almost 7, so, still coming in the mornings for cuddles. And yeah, so I think I've grown into motherhood, and I love, as they've grown, being able to walk with them through their life journey and processing life with them, and just, supporting them that way. So I think I grew into being a mum. I don't think I knew what I was doing to begin with.
I think with each child you develop your own unique bond and relationship with. Maybe there are little quirks or things that you enjoy doing together. What does that look like with your 3 boys?
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny when Judah, my second, was born. I actually, as he came out, I got this fright of like, oh, he's not Malachi. And I know that sounds really weird, but I'd got so used to, as a first-time mum, this is what my child looks like. And to suddenly birth a new baby, I had this moment of like, you're a whole new being that I'm going to have to get to know and explore, and we're going to have to figure out our relationship, which is going to be different from my relationship with my first son. So it was, it sounds really funny to say I didn't think that it was going to be a different baby. Of course it's going to be a different baby. So each of my kids have got their own beautiful personalities, and I'm a great believer in that names carry power. So we named them all with great intention, actually. And I feel like they carry their names, and their names enhance them more. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. But so Malachi means, comes from a verse which says, the hearts of the fathers will return to the sons, and the hearts of the sons will return to the fathers. So it's just about that connection, child to parent, I guess. And in a world or an age where there's a lot of broken relationships, we really wanted a relationship that was deeply connected to our child. And he's so that. He is a walker and a talker. He loves to process. He's an external processor. He loves unpacking everything with us. Like, I don't think the other kids get much of a word in most of the time, but I love that about him. He's adventurous and feisty, and so we do a lot of walking and talking. That's kind of our thing. Judah means praise, and he is my awe and wonder child. He's full of faith. He's got this gloriously positive, kind of sparkly perspective on the world. He's very futuristic. I think the difference between the two of them can best be summed up with my pregnancy with my third son, Ezra. So when Ezra was in my tummy, Judah would come and kiss it and hug my tummy and, hey baby, love you, send lots of love vibes, and so glorious. And Malachi was kind of like, you've got a bigger tummy, like, let's walk and talk. Didn't really connect. And then once Ezra was born, Judah kind of moved away. It was like, oh, he's tangible now. He's not in my imagination. He's real. Oh, let's move on to something else out here. Whereas Malachi got very practical. He would make him black and white books and he would sit and read to him and sing to him. And suddenly there was a tangible, practical element to this new person in our world. So those two are real different. So Judah I connect with. He's very sensitive and quiet. So it's finding those little moments to come and snuggle with him and read stories or read the Psalms. He loves listening to the Psalms, so we'll do that together. And then Ezra means helper. And I decided I should have called all my children Ezra, Ezra 1, 2, and 3, because he embodies helpingness. He's always like, what can I do, Mum? How can we do stuff together? He's very engaged. He'll do any job given. I mean, he asks to wipe the walls sometimes. Can I just wipe the walls for you? Certainly, my son, he most definitely can. He's quite curious like that. It's astounding. I don't know if hope for his sake he grows out of such a deep willingness to be helpful. But he loves games. He's a persistent games person. So cards, he was beating me at last card at 5 years old. He's now playing chess and beating me and Carla. He's like got a little mathematical brain. So he just wants to play games all the time. And yeah, so they're all cool kids. They're all very positive, very happy with life. They do big adventurous things all the time. Anton has them at the top of Mount Ruapehu, snowboarding down that, Wanganui River, canoeing, so we're an adventurous outdoors family, and they're all real cool kids, all real cool boys.
Got this image of Ezra like putting the cards down while, with one foot like sweeping or something and wiping the walls down. Oh, yeah. What an image.
Yeah. No, he's cool.
Life really changed for you guys, though, about 1.5 years ago. Can you share a little bit around that?
Yeah, so I had just celebrated my 40th birthday, and in a really big way, because before that I'd actually had back surgery for a chronic back problem. And so as a family, we went out to Tongariro National Park and did the circuit there for 3 days in this big tramp and carried backpacks. And I've got a picture of me on top of Tongariro going, yes, I can be the mum that I wanted to be and get active with my kids again. And then literally 9 months later, in October that year, I had just a routine blood test for iron levels and was driving home with my kids. I can still remember the phone call very clearly. And the doctor rang about 2 hours after a blood test, which, would be unusual. And she said, how are you feeling? I said, I'm totally fine. She said, temperature, fever, anything? I said, no, nothing. She said, we need you to come in and see the doctor tomorrow immediately. And I was like, oh. So I headed into the doctor's the next day, and after he asked me what I'd Googled, and I said, everything other than the C word, he said, actually, it's cancer. And I was diagnosed with leukemia. It's a chronic lymphomic leukemia, which is blood cancer. And it was supposed to be a chronic cancer. So what he said was it was kind of like diabetes and would just kind of be something that I'd lived with and not to be too concerned. So I kind of took some deep breaths and tried to embrace that. And then my next blood test, it had gone much higher, and the next one even higher. And so in 18 months, I've started treatment 2 months ago. And so it hasn't been chronic at all, and it's been quite an intense journey for us as a family. Yeah.
And so you're sitting there with that information, you're processing yourself. At what point do you decide to tell your boys and to actually share that with them?
Yeah, so I walked out of the doctor's office. I hadn't taken anybody because I wasn't expecting, bad news. And I went, I can't go home with this. Like, how do I walk through the door to my kids waiting for dinner? And, so I went to the library and I walked up and down the aisles going, I don't know how to leave. And eventually I had to leave because the library was going to start. And so I drove home, and Anton came out and said, is everything okay? And I had to shake my head and say no, and kind of briefly told him, and we just decided we'd hold it together through that night, and while we figured out how we would go about talking to them about it. And over that time I really had to wrestle with two factors, I guess. One was that I'd just been on a big health journey with my back, and I was like, I don't want to burden them with something else wrong with me. Like, as a mum, you want to be the person that's strong, and bringing another weakness into their world was really hard. Excuse me. But then I also had an experience as a kid of my great-grandfather was old and in his 90s and going to die. And we got to go and see him before he passed. But our families didn't tell us that this was the last time that we would see him. And they knew because his kidney function had failed, but they didn't want to let us know. They just wanted it to be a nice end. And after he passed away and I found out they knew, I was quite resentful because I wanted to be able to say goodbye knowing that. And I was old enough, I was like 10 or 11, to recognise that. And so I've always said to my kids, I'll be honest with you. I don't ever want to keep something hidden. I don't ever want it to be a surprise. So I had this tension of not wanting to be a burden, but this promise that I will be an honest mum. And I also talked to my mum about it, and she said, she was actually a cancer nurse at the time for Cancer Society, and she said they'll pick it up, they'll know. So just tell them. And so we sat down. We have family dinners every night, and we always sit around and do our thank yous. And so we did that, and then I just said, hey, top of the thank yous, I'm just thankful for life and for you guys, and I need to share something with you, and just kind of laid it out calmly. I didn't cry, just the facts as much as we knew them. Didn't try and promise that I would be around forever, and that everything was going to be okay, but also didn't do anything to scare them either. Just tried to keep it really just as much as we could. Yeah. And then they all had their own individual responses to that. So Malachi, who's very practical minded, said, Mum, they came up with an immunisation for COVID real quick, so there'll be a cure for this, don't worry about it. And I was like, okay. And then Judah, who's really faith-filled, said, God loves you and he's going to look after you, Mum, he's got this. And then I think Ezra was the hardest, he's my youngest, and at bedtime, because we did it as a family, and then I sat with each of them individually, and at bedtime Ezra said, Nanny Yo, which is my nan, so his great-grand, she died of cancer last year, and you've got cancer. Can I get cancer? And honestly, I can't say no because that wouldn't be true, but I just highlighted that in our family, my mum's had breast cancer and she's still around, and his other grandma, Anton's mum, has had bowel cancer and she's survived it. And I just gave him stories of hope to hold on to and said, we're in this together, but there's people that have lived this. So, yeah.
What wisdom for you?
So hard in the moment.
Yeah, but just listening to how you told them, and then that individual time for them to have their questions and your pause and to think how to answer that, and that giving hope even when you don't have all the answers yourself. What a beautiful image. How have they each processed and navigated since then?
So because at the start we were told it would be like diabetes, we kind of pulled up our bootstraps and went, let's just move forward and work this out together. And I've had back surgery and we've climbed a mountain after that. We can do this again as a family. And we kind of had a period of relative calm, I guess, as my blood tests increased the levels. At that point, I didn't continue to share what the implications of that meant. I was honest that, things were changing, but not the implications of it, because we didn't know at that point what it did mean. So we kind of got back to normal for a bit, but at the start of this year, it was clear that treatment was going to be needed, and that was going to have an impact on the family. And with the call for treatment from the specialists, I guess there was a lot more the risk of anxiety and fear around what that meant and the impacts on the family and the kids and all the rest of it. So that was kind of building. I've probably been tougher on myself in terms of what I can do as a mum with them and the limitations that I've had through having cancer. So coming up to treatment, I got busy, sorting out logistics as we do, making sure they had friends to go and visit, and they had baking and meals going to be cooked for them, and all this busy mum stuff that we do to make sure that they're well supported and cared for. And then and hadn't really checked in with them so much. And one afternoon, Judah came home from school. He's my middle, really sensitive one. And he said, hey, Mum, I just wanted you to let you know that today at school I asked a couple of my friends to be my support team when you start treatment. And that just blew me away. That two things. A, that he had the emotional maturity to recognise that this was not just a journey I was on, but we were all on, and to ask for support from his friends. So I was like, wow, at 11 years old, I'm so proud of you. And then that hardness on myself, I was like, oh, how have I missed that he's looking for support elsewhere because I'm doing everything else but not sitting down with him. So that was a really humbling moment for me. And but it was cool because it was probably still a month out. So I had time to kind of go, okay, let's start checking in as a family again and make sure that everybody's, whatever fears or worries they've got, they can air them and we can talk through them. And yeah, and, and the little things like I was trying to organise my kids to be on the school lunches. Our family's not part of the school lunch thing. Our school doesn't get it, but for a few families. So I thought, now's a good time to put the kids on school lunches. So Anton's got one less thing to do in the morning. And Ezra, my youngest, was getting really upset by the concept of these school lunches. And I couldn't figure out his behaviour, what was going on, until I sat down with him. And it was too much of a routine change, It was fine to go to people's houses after school. It was fine to have different people coming in to support for dinners, but to lose his sandwiches was like one step too far. And so I just had to be sensitive to what it looked like for each of them and just really walk through that individually, what that meant. Yeah.
In this season for you, obviously priorities change, and what was important maybe less important, and what wasn't so important it probably is. Have you had those, a restack of priorities or how you do things?
Yes, and in some ways I'd still like to have more. And I'll explain that. I think bedtimes have become hugely important to me, and they always were, but that special one-on-one connection time of like just going up, and especially straight after diagnosis, it was like, I don't know how long I'm going to read books to you anymore, or when I get to kiss you like this again. And, so I really treasure bedtimes as something that has become more so hugely important than before. Peace was something that has been an awkward thing to deal with, because you live in a family, you've got 3 boys, there's sibling rivalry, there's squabbles over who's sitting on what chair or how big the piece of cake is that somebody's got. And suddenly all of that, I don't want to call it trivial because it's important to them, but when it's a life or death situation, how big the piece of cake isn't that important anymore in my perspective, in my world. So I really found that peace, the need for peace in our home, became really important to me. And I have had to navigate how I communicate that to everyone, because I could just get really grumpy and annoyed with everybody. Or I could try and explain my perspective and help them see why peace is just something I'm really needing to lean into, and just a calm. And because togetherness and connection, actually, when you're facing your own mortality, you just realise how important those caring for each other is. And yeah, so it's a good thing to walk my boys through, because that's actually important for growing up anyway. So it's kind of cool. And the one thing I wish that I could have let go of more, I think, would be housework. Because it would be so nice to go, actually, the vacuuming and the toilets and the dishes aren't that important. But with a chronic illness, actually, they turn up every day, and I can't neglect them, unfortunately, as much as I would like to go, can we just put a pause on these things? They don't go away. So yeah.
They didn't get the memo.
Yeah, life's more important than dishes.
When word gets out that you have cancer, I'm sure there are a lot of offers that come in to help, a lot of questions, probably a lot of advice that people want to send your way, ideas, even people that you haven't heard from for a long time probably wanting to get in touch, and it feels like everyone wants a piece of you in a way. How have you navigated that?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because it's this two sides of the one coin. There's a part of you that really, we all need support and care in a season like this. It's so important. So you want to acknowledge and embrace that extra attention. And then on the other side, that stretches your capacity, when you're not well, and there's priorities like your children that really need that focus. I kind of think of it a little bit like actually when you have a baby and you're in this really precious season where you've got this gorgeous newborn and all you want to do is spend your time in an intimate, just bubble with them. And then you've got all these people that want to celebrate with you and see Bubba and share it. And there's all these offers, and it's like you're torn between these kind of two really important needs in your life, and it's finding how to balance them. So I guess it's been very much like that. We've had so much care flowing our way, and which has been so beautiful. And at the same time, I did realise with my kids that coming close to treatment, really, that the airwaves were just really full of cancer conversations, and that wasn't actually helping us as a family, because they needed a life that's not just about my cancer, and I need a life that's not just about my cancer, because it's otherwise quite depressing. And so I had to really get good at, and it's taken some work, saying no to those conversations at particular times and setting really strong boundaries. And in order to do that, because I know people's intentions are good, so it's hard to say no, but knowing that I'm saying yes to our well-being and our future and our hearts, and saying yes to my kids. So just really kind of bringing in some boundaries. I hate to use the word boundaries, but that's what it is, I guess, some good boundaries to protect our family. And then at the same time welcoming like the meals. We had a meal roster for the first month of treatment, and I just loved, there was a moment we were sitting over a lasagna, probably. Like, people love making lasagna. And the kids are really enjoying it. And they said, Mum, when you get better, we want to be able to make meals for other people. This is so cool how much care people are giving us. Can we make as many cookies and lasagnas to give to other people? And I just think how special that they've received a gift from others and been in a position to need to accept that into their lives, and that inspires them to not just take it for themselves, but go, how can we then gift that to the world ourselves? And so I think, it's been a beautiful thing, the support. Really, really appreciated.
We've already heard some of the gold that's come through here, but has there been any unexpected gold that's come through, laughter and joy in the midst of the hard stuff?
Yeah, there is always beautiful moments, in life. It's like when I went through my back surgery, I kind of likened it to, you're in the dark season, but there's always stars sparkling, and it's choosing to look at the stars in the sky. And my nurse is a star. I just have the most glorious nurse in my cancer trial, and she just makes it easy to turn up there every day and take the treatment, and she's amazing. So she's brilliant. But on a bigger picture, we started a homeschooling journey just before I was diagnosed. Well, we set out to start a homeschooling journey. And so our first year of homeschooling my eldest son was the same year of my first year of diagnosis. And we're doing it for college, because we don't have too many colleges close by, and we have 3 families that work together to we've got a dedicated space, and there's 4 kids, and so I just turn up once a week. And it has been such a joy to be able to participate in his learning and all of their learnings, and as a community, because I don't know how long I'm going to be on the earth for. And to be honest, none of us do, so I'm not alone in that one. But I do wonder how many adult years I'll have with my kids. So to spend time on a daily basis investing in learning and fun and just journeying together way more closely is through teenage years is something that I'm super, super stoked about and just really loving. And kind of wider than that too, there's that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, being in a kind of vulnerable position and needing support actually means that we are getting all these offers of support. And I feel like something Anton and I always wanted, and we always talked about before having kids and throughout our children's early years, was that in our teenage years, we really missed having our own teenage years. We missed having mentors and really good role models in our life. And we've always wanted to kind of set our boys up with something like that. And I've got a teen and a tween, and the people that are coming around us are fulfilling that prayer so greatly. They're just... Today they're staying with some friends who are taking them motorbiking, and stepping up into all these kind of adrenaline sports that my boisterous boys want to do that I'm not capable of. And so we've got this incredible village helping raise our kids, and that to me is such a joy. Like it makes me feel not redundant in a bad way, but I'm like, if I was to go tomorrow, I feel like my kids are so well supported that I'm comfortable with that. They've got some good mums and dads around them beyond just Anton and I. So that's something that I absolutely fills my heart every day.
You started a blog over a year ago called With Courage, Love and Legacy, where you share your thoughts, reflections while sitting on the edge of eternity. What made you start the blog and share such a personal journey?
So let me explain the Courage, Love and Legacy. So my diagnosis is shortened to CLL. And so I wanted to rebrand my cancer. I wanted to reframe it and give it something that I could live with and live for. There's 4 kind of threads to it, I guess. One was that I realized really early on when I was making that I've got cancer diagnosis phone calls that it was going to get really tiring updating people all the time. So I wanted a way to communicate without having to communicate in person. So I did it for that. It's become a place where I process this journey, and that's been really healthy and helpful for me. I also found at 40, I'm very much on the young end of the spectrum for this diagnosis. Most people are in their 70s or 80s. So trying to find stories of hope to cling on to where people have got past the 5 or 10 years of normal life expectancy when they're in their elder years has been really hard for me. And I thought, well, rather than be sad that there is nobody that I can cling to, why don't I become the hope that other people might want in the future? So I want to have a blog that goes 20 or 30 years so that when people find it, they go, oh, she got to 20 or 30 years. And then, and the last reason is probably it's a love letter to my kids, because right now they have no idea what I'm going through and I don't expect them to understand. But when they reach adulthood and they want to look back on what this looked like for me, they can find those answers.
I suppose you've kind of answered it a little bit, with how you've come up with the name. But what does courage, love, and legacy mean to you?
Yeah, so those 3 words are kind of, I guess, core values for me in life anyway. So helpful that I was diagnosed with something that fitted. Courage is really living beyond fear, I guess, or living with fear and choosing to go out, stepping into places of fear anyway. So I've always thought of courage like I hate flying. Put me on an aeroplane and I will hold a stranger's hand and grip it tight if we hit turbulence while I'm crying, because I don't like it that much. But I will still hop on a plane because I know what's good on the other side. So that to me is courage, is doing something regardless of the fear that you may feel. And this journey is definitely full of fear, but I still choose to step out in places that I would maybe rather tuck away in bed for the day. Love is just giving a place that all my choices are motivated by love. Yeah. And legacy is I've always lived for a life beyond myself, a life of service, a life of giving to other people and creating a mark on this world that leaves it better than how I found it. So, yeah.
You and Anton celebrated 19 years of marriage recently, and you wrote in your blog, when you're young, healthy and in love, the world feels like a wide open door to unexplored realms of exciting and hope-filled possibilities. We feel invincible, for better, for richer, in health to love and cherish, and it's glorious. And now for you and Anton in the season, the other half of those vows are perhaps coming more into focus, for worse, for poorer, and sickness. Now, you've created so much together. I was thinking about this, with your work, creating community, the charity work you've done, you've told stories and films, and you've created 3 amazing boys and your own home and family. What helps you both keep taking bold steps into the future together as a team, despite sickness?
Yeah, so that despite sickness, those sickness, poor, worse, it's actually interesting how they are threaded together too, I think, and not something I would have picked when I said them. But, with me being unwell or going through treatment and just the tiredness and things, I don't have the capacity to work and contribute financially. So that falls on Anton. And also there's a burden for him of having to be around to help with the kids, because I don't always have the energy for that. At the moment, I'm having a nana nap almost about this time of day, most days. Or sometimes I'll come home in the evening and just be like, I'm exhausted, see you later. And so it has taken its toll financially. We've been through a real tough couple of years there, as well as the illness. And I guess there's the burden for him, and then the burden for me of feeling like a burden. Like, it's not a nice place to sit going, I'm now having to rely so heavily on someone where you want to carry things equally in a relationship, right? You want to work together and both be contributing. And so for me to kind of be falling down in that respect is hard. I guess the thing, we have lived a crazy fun life, and the thing that keeps us going is, I think before we got married, we used to always talk about, and we always have talked about, living a life less ordinary and wanting to walk into uncharted territory and discover new things together and take risks and live by faith and not need lots of money, but just live a life that we do wild things. And so in some ways, on our good days, this cancer journey is that. It's an uncharted territory. It's risky. It's wild. And so when we're in a good frame of mind and we're together on this, that's what we do, is we just go, how can we maximize this? How can we make the best out of this situation? How can we bring something beautiful into the world through this? And so our little motto, living a life less ordinary, I guess keeps us sane in those times of sickness, poverty and worseness.
Being vulnerable has been a real part of this journey for you. What have you learned about vulnerability and the freedom that can be found through it?
Yeah, vulnerability's another one of, I guess, my core values that came through. I really discovered it before Brené Brown made a big deal about it, but she gave a word to it. She gave it a name. I discovered the value of it, and she gave it a name, and now we put those two together. But yeah, in my 20s, I guess I'd gone through a real messy teens years and got pretty good at hiding my mess and feeling shame and guilt about things that I did that I wasn't stoked about. And that kind of, I called myself I was a bit of a closet hider of things that I didn't want everyone else to see. On the front, I looked great, and I looked like I knew what I was doing and had it all good. And then behind the scenes, things were a bit messy. And one day, I actually spent some time with a good friend, solo mum who just raised her kids so beautifully. And she needed to be vulnerable with someone. She needed someone to sit there and share her heartaches. And so we used to just sit in the evenings by a fire and talk and share and go really deep together. And there was so much healing in that vulnerability, in that place of just sharing heart to heart and connecting and not hiding anything and not being judged and not being held wanting for stuff that we weren't doing well at. And so I went just through this beautiful season with her and learnt to be vulnerable and found so much freedom in that I just want to be like that with everybody. And I want everybody to be like that because when we have that connection with each other, that's when we can all grow and we see that we don't have it all together. And that's okay because none of us are perfect. But when we actually go, hey, here's a part of me that's not working out right now, we can help each other and go, oh, you need help in that? Awesome. Here, I can support you or, whatever. So, so this journey, my blog, cancer, very much about vulnerability. Some days it's hard to own. Some days I just want to hide in bed and not tell anybody that I'm here anymore. But I think it's a good journey, and I've found a lot of people encouraged by it because I've had a lot of feedback from people with cancer, people without cancer saying, oh, I don't like to burden people with my problems. I don't want to share. I don't want people to, be worried about me or, whatever. And they're encouraged to actually talk to somebody about what's going on for them, which is really cool.
Right. It's pretty special to find somebody that you can be free like that with and who can respond in a way that just helps you not feel judged or wrong or all of those things. So we all need somebody, I think, in our lives to do that for us.
Yeah.
Writing from the edge of eternity, as you put it, I'm wondering what sitting on that edge looks like. I could imagine you dip your toes in both sides on different days, maybe, from expecting the best and then preparing for the worst.
Yeah. So it's all of that. And I wrote The Edge of Eternity because there's this moment that I remember before diagnosis, and it came back to me at diagnosis of feeling really the same. And so when my first son, and actually all three of them, but my first son probably the most profound moment of this, after he was born a couple of days later, I was sitting outside. He was sleeping, one of the only times he probably was sleeping, sitting outside on the deck looking out over the ocean and the beach, and just the world sparkled. Like, it was so alive and so vibrant and so precious, and everything just felt glorious because I'd had this baby, and it just life, like that's the edge of eternity. We've birthed this beautiful being into the world. And then after diagnosis, I had the same sparkly sensation about the world because suddenly this is all going to go. I'm not going to be here to see the sparkly waves and my children smiling and have a kiss on and all that stuff. And so it was this kind of profound life death. They're actually two sides of you're sitting on the edge of eternity, and it's actually spectacular. So for me, in terms of standing in that space and what that looks like on a daily basis, it's beautiful. And then it's also a lot of pressure because I'm really aware that time is limited, and I have the sense of like, how do I squeeze the most value out of this time that I have, because I don't know how long it's going to be. And I'm a bit of an A-type personality, so it's really hard work inside my head some days because I feel this pressure of like, it's not a bucket list pressure, it's just, how do I make the most of this connection moment and this connection moment with people and with what I'm doing and what I contribute to the world? And that can add a lot of pressure to my relationships because not everybody's walking along with the shadow of mortality beside them. So I'm having to really learn grace that, still cleaning teeth every night, asking the kids to clean their teeth, make their bed, like that's all still normal and okay, and find that kind of middle ground between those two tensions, because it's great to squeeze the most out of it, and then life does just have its day-to-day ordinariness that goes along with it.
Absolutely. Now, I hope, Kylie, that you have a long, full life ahead of you. And I would love to book a lunch date in, maybe go for a walk on the beach or something when we're old and grey. I think that would be wonderful. But one day, though, we will leave our kids and they will continue without us. When that day does come, Kylie, how do you hope your kids will remember you? And what are the gifts, the values, the beliefs, the life lessons you hope to leave them with?
I feel like that's something that's grown since the diagnosis. Like, beforehand, there was some things that were and still are really important to Anton and I. So I'll start there and then I'll go into the post-diagnosis things because it has changed a little bit as well. Was added to. I think it's added to. So some of the things that we love as a family is, like I said at the start, I really want them to know that I love them deeply. Number one is that I go away, but they know that they've been loved well in life. I want them to know that God loves them deeply. We have a faith, and that's really important to me, that they know that they are so loved by their Creator as well. And despite what's happening in my world now, that love still exists in this place. I really hope that they grow up honouring and stewarding both people and planet. Anton and I love the world that we live on, and we're both kind of very anti-consumerism, get things secondhand, live basically because we want to live not for profit but for people and for the planet, and to just walk carefully on this world and treat it with the respect that it deserves because it is so beautiful and people are so beautiful. I really hope that our kids walk out just as really caring, beautiful individuals. Actually, total sideswipe. I have this really sweet story of my son Malachi. I was in Vanuatu in a cyclone Pam years ago, and everything was demolished. Like it was absolutely terrible. And I got this call from Kindy after I'd come back, and they said, "Your son's acting really odd. He's walking around picking leaves off trees." And I said, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." Like he was taking leaves off trees, and I went and asked him about it later. "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, Mum, all the trees in Vanuatu have lost their leaves, so I'm collecting leaves to send to the people in Vanuatu so their trees can have leaves. And I guess that's the heart that I hope my kids still carry into their adult life, that they want to care for people and they want to care for the planet. And then I guess since diagnosis, in terms of how they would remember me, this wasn't the model that I was imagining that I would be as a mum. But I hope that those 3 words that I've got in my blog, I hope that they remember a mum who lived with courage. Excuse me. It's not fun imagining your funeral. I hope that they see that I lived with courage and did things on the ordinary, because we can when we step through fear, and that fear never has to limit us, that we can live really big and bold lives, and that they see that and how I demonstrated things to them and what we talked about. I hope that they see that despite the obstacles life throws at us, and it inevitably throws everybody, I'm not alone in this, everybody goes through hard stuff, but that we can live with love in all its fullness and still laugh even when the going gets tough. I hope they really know that, and I hope that they choose to create a legacy that exceeds mine, that they stand on my shoulders and go above and beyond me.
It's beautiful. What a legacy. And gosh, everything you've shared today, what wisdom, what hope, what love. I feel like it's a real blessing and a real gift, your words that you've shared with us today, and being so vulnerable. And I think your boys are very lucky to have you as a mum. I just need to catch my breath, Jenny, so I'm just going to throw it over to you. I'm going to do that because there was so much gold. There is so much that I'm still sitting with. So what really stood out for you?
I loved when Kylie talked about the lunches for one of her boys, and that was the thing that this particular boy got stuck on, that he was coping with a whole lot of other things that were getting changed in his life, and he was kind of flexing for them, but there was one thing too many, and his behaviour wasn't typical. And so she did that investigation, and she would have leaned into him to find out what it was that was bothering him. And I love that. We get this opportunity as a parent to kind of investigate, put a pause on what's going on, tell me about it. You don't seem yourself, lately. And then the other thing I love about it is that it reminds us that children absolutely love certainty, predictability, order, having the sandwiches, the same old, not a school lunch, which may have had, more options, but the same school lunch also says to a child, my world has got something that keeps turning over in a similar way. I can be certain that I'm getting these type of sandwiches. Someone is taking care of the business that makes my life feel ordered and certain.
Yeah, and a lovely response to that from Kylie and Anton of actually going, okay, there's a lot of change. Let's not change this. Because in that moment, it could be like, well, actually, no, we've got to do this. We're making life easier. You've got to get on board. But actually, like you say, to stop, to pause. Jenny Hale always tells me to be curious, and to see the bigger picture there. It's quite beautiful.
Yep. There's some really good stuff that comes out of curiosity, because it does push the pause button while we take a look at things. And often we find out we always find out that there's a reason behind the behaviour we're seeing.
It's good. I saw you scribbling some other notes there, Jenny.
There was some other notes. Yes, bedtimes. That was a ritual that Kylie mentioned. And I love it because bedtimes are a time, we'll often feel like, oh man, I just want them to be in bed and asleep and I'm done. And we kind of peter out a little bit. Good night, love you. Whereas this is an opportunity to spend that little bit of time with each child and sit on the bed and tickle their back or ask them the highs and lows and buffaloes of the day, whatever it is. But that is your chance to deeply connect with a child about their day and children need that, and I think we need the insights that are offered. And what's lovely about it, I think children know it's sort of borrowed time. It's got a bit later than it should have. And so they'll often share things in that moment that they won't share any other time of the day.
Yeah, there is gold in that time. And Kylie mentioned how it's always been special, but since her being diagnosed, it's become even richer and even more precious. And that for me, the whole conversation, there was so much gold, so many things that I'm looking at my family life going, have we got balance there? You know, what's important? But I think sometimes, you know, you get that phone call and life changes, and then you kind of sit down and you rethink what's important and you make changes. But I felt like this conversation was a real gift, that we could pause right now and go, what is important? You know, if I was in Kylie's shoes, what would I be wanting to change out? What would I be saying no to so that I could say yes to more time with my kids or more peace in my home? How do I want to be remembered? Sometimes, you know, we're busy and we make mistakes and we try again. But I love the fact that we are writing our own story. You know, this is our own family. And if you're not liking the story that's been written so far, maybe this is the time to pause and to write a different story. You know, there's still time to change it up, to think about how you want to be remembered and to think about the values for your family.
Yeah, I think we can leave values underground a little bit, but this was a good prompt for us all to look at, you know, do we want our family to be generous? Do we want them to be kind? Do we want them to be honest, courageous? You know, her beautiful words that she used around courage and legacy, and what was the other one?
Courage, love.
Love, legacy. I think, you know, if a family sort of had 3 things, you know, it would be a great thing to do is to say these are the things that really matter, and we're going to explore what they mean, and we want them to filter into our lives and be gifts to others. And if someone said, oh, you know, what's that family all about? It would be wonderful if people could say, oh, they're really generous and kind, and they're so fun, and they're very outdoorsy, whatever it is. I think this is a moment to really look at what values we want and what's really important.
I want my boy to be collecting leaves so we can send it where leaves are needed.
Wasn't that beautiful? Yeah, you see the heart, with children when they do something that obviously isn't helpful, but wow, he's thinking about others and how to help them, and that would just bring such delight.
Maybe you were listening today and it brought up something for you, and we don't want you to feel left there with that. So do reach out, parentingplace.nz. We're here to help parents feel confident so that children feel deeply loved. So if we can help you on your parenting journey, please get in touch. We're here and we'd love to do anything to help.
Rover. Music, radio, podcasts.